Hi guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. So a couple of days back, I did a video on speculation versus investment as it applies to the greater antiques and collectibles trade, okay? The video got more views than I expected, especially for me being a very new channel, and I'm not even promoting this channel. So the fact that people actually picked it out of the YouTube algorithm and viewed it, I mean, I was expecting it would get 10 views. I think right now, we're on the 4th day of its release and it got like 30 or 40 views, which was actually more than what I thought it would get, because usually the longer videos that aren't category specific, meaning they're not applying anything to video games or comic books right in the title, most people don't click on, unfortunately, okay? That said, you guys shocked me, so I thank you for watching. If you're a new viewer of mine, please consider liking, subscribing, or commenting, and even letting me know if you don't like my content, okay? It's the only way that I can kind of provide feedback or get feedback. Rather than giving a thumbs down, I always prefer that you put a comment in the comment section. As long as it's respectful, I'll take your feedback. That said, I did hint in that particular video that I wanted to do several videos on the topic of antiques and collectibles as a valid asset class, okay? There's a lot of fundamental and advanced collecting theories that can be taught when talking about antiques and collectibles as a valid alternative asset class. So we have to set the stage here, okay? This first video is going to be somewhat elementary in the beginning, then it's going to get more deep and involved, and it's also going to springboard into other videos I'm going to do surrounding this topic. Before we begin, I do have one brief caveat I have to say. We're getting into where we're talking about antiques and collectibles as a valid asset class. That said, it is true. I hold a degree in business administration with a minor in finance from Albright College in Reading, Pennsylvania, okay? As a matter of fact, I don't even know if they give minors in finance. I just took a lot of finance courses and hoped for the best. It seemed to work out okay for me. That said, I am not licensed in any type of securities or brokerage or anything of that nature at present time, okay? I am very good at my own finances. I will put that out there. However, I don't know your particular situation, so I am not your financial advisor. Keep that in mind, okay? Anything I talk about in these videos, you have to apply it to a greater understanding of where you are and who you are financially and as a person, to have both the mindset to know your own strengths and weaknesses as it applies to financial investing, okay? Just want to put that out there. That's how we can continue. So, I'm going to start the subject of antiques and collectibles as a valid asset class kind of in the middle. Then I'm going to go back and talk about more how it began and more how we got to where we are today. So where we're going to go right now is we're going to take our DeLorean, okay, and we're going to go back to 1980. And everybody always picks on me and they say, why the hell do you always go back to 1980 when you talk about antiques and collectibles? Because I do write for Antiques and Auction News, and I did a 4-part article on this topic that was seen as somewhat controversial for some, and it was seen as a very good piece to read for others, okay? I got multiple amounts of feedback on those articles. So, we're going back to 1980, and the reason why I'm picking 1980 is for 2 reasons. The first is, back in 1980, there was no internet, no texting. None of the developments in the trade that we take for granted today were created at that point. You really had to have a lot of knowledge. The only thing that really you had to your benefit was a book or a possible price guide, and you guys know how I feel about those, okay? That said, you had to know your own crap if you wanted to get invested in the antiques and collectibles trade back in 1980, okay? Another reason we're starting in 1980, and I'm not getting political in these videos, I want you guys to know, but in 1980, Ronald Reagan became president around that time frame, okay, and he instituted something called Reaganomics, which for those of you unaware is trickle-down economics, okay? Trickle-down economics, whether you agree with it, whether you hate it, whether you think it's the worst thing since whatever, what it did was, and I don't think anybody's going to disagree in the comment section when I state this, okay, because I can prove it in facts. What it did was, it allowed extremely wealthy people to pay an extremely lower amount in overall federal income taxes, okay? A lot of the people who benefited from trickle-down economics and those type of tax plans had a lot more money at the end of the year than they knew what to do with because they weren't paying taxes on most of their income gains because the tax rate was slashed for people who have a lot of dividend, interest income, investment income, capital gains, even business income in certain cases, okay? If you want to study something that's going to help you grow as an individual, look up the different types of income and how it's taxed. I'm just going to put that out there and see which side of the equation you want to be on. I'm going to tell you this right now. If you go to work, which most of us do, and you work for a corporation, that income is taxed at a very high rate compared to dividend income, investment income, and business income. Just want to put that out there. For those of you that don't watch traditional finance videos, I'm sprinkling a little bit of that knowledge in some of these videos just to help you out, just to give you a taste, so I know your time's valuable, okay? If you only want to watch me as opposed to some other YouTuber who just does finance, I get that. So I do want to make sure that you guys have all the knowledge you need to be successful, whether you're just a collector, a speculator, or you do want to become a sophisticated investor, okay? So, we're starting in 1980 because once that tax plan was established by Ronald Reagan, a lot of people had more money than they knew what to do with. And these people already had more money than they knew what to do with. So where did that money go? Well, rather than put it back directly into the greater economy, like certain politicians want you to believe, a lot of people took that money and they said, you know what? We could start putting money into alternate asset classes, and we could protect our wealth that way, because if we buy the right kinds of items or scarce items out there, the money will be protected for generations, and as long as we're following the trends properly, we can ensure those items are passed on to future generations. This was the first time where you started to see pieces of rare art that now today in 2019 sell for $100 million to $200 million a painting. They started their steady incline from 10 million to 20 million to 30 million to 40 million. It's also the time in American history where the coin market first became red hot. In the early 1980s, the creation of PCGS and, as of later, NGC helped stabilize and cause a massive infusion of cash that hit the rare coin market, okay? Unlike anything else ever seen at the time, okay? So let's review here. Because of the tax plan, because of what was happening in the overall economy at the time, very wealthy, sophisticated investors entered, and were already involved in, but they entered it more en masse. They entered the greater antiques, art, and collectibles trade. They were primarily buying coins, jewelry, art, very rare antiques, stuff like the DuPont family would own, very 6-7 figure range, the high end of the market, okay? Now, you have to understand that had two effects on the overall antiques and collectibles trade as a whole, and also the greater economy as a whole. So let's take the first one first. The effect it had on the antiques and collectibles trade was, now publications like Wall Street Journal and other business publications were starting to report on all these record-breaking sales in the coin, in the currency, in the art, and in the traditional antique fields, okay? This primed the pump so that people living in Main Street America would see this, okay? I have a video coming out, and I don't know if it's going to hit tonight. I don't know if it's going to hit tomorrow. It's a problem that I have with the news media and how they report on antiques, okay? I'm not going to comment any more on that. But there is a video that's going to hit, and you guys will be able to correlate it back to this if this video hits first. That said, what happened in that realm is you have to understand at this time in Main Street America, if you were a collector prior to the internet, you were a collector because you had passion for the items that you collected. If you were a dealer, you were on the investment side of the trade, okay? Most collectors, however, here's the problem. Back before the internet, the average person had to buy and sell either through a dealer, at a yard sale, at a flea market, at an antique mart, or through an auction, okay? And if you want to study something interesting, I'm going to state this. If you ever read the book that I recommend, which is Killer Stuff and Tons of Money, which talks about more so the antiques and the collectibles trade, but more so the antiques trade, you're going to learn that a lot of the reputable auction houses, I'm talking the Christie's and the Sotheby's, they were established almost 100 years ago, if not more, okay? So if you study their history, you have to understand, even in the 1980s, with no internet, Sotheby's and Christie's were still operating in the greater antiques trade, okay? A lot of high wealthy individuals knew about them and would sign up for their mail order auctions or attend auctions in person, okay? It's very interesting to know. So there was a lot of auction business back before the internet. It was just done in a different way, okay? So we also need to talk about how Wall Street was affected by the cash infusion from the Reaganomic tax plan, okay, that allowed the wealthy to seek out other alternate asset classes. You have to understand the financial industry is very protective of itself, and it should be, because I'm going to just say it, guys. You may disagree with me on this, okay? Out of all the assets in that I have, okay, antiques and collectibles are more of a more roughly complement my overall portfolio, okay? I only hold 20 to 30% of my entire net worth in antiques and collectibles. Now, some of you will say that's a lot. Some of you will say, well, gee, for the knowledge that he has, that doesn't seem like it is a lot, okay? Most of my assets are actually invested in mutual funds, ETFs, stocks, bonds, and real estate, okay? The antiques and the collectibles that I do hold, and I divide them up into categories, investment ended and speculative ended. The stuff that you see on this table, I hate to tell you, this all is categorized as speculative investments, okay? My coin, currency collection, the pieces of art that I do have, the historical documents, that stuff is considered investment grade antiques and collectibles, okay? That's what I consider to be the core component of that 20 to 30% that makes up my overall portfolio, okay, in regards to antiques and collectibles. Just want to put that out there. That said, the financial industry, upon seeing how much money was starting to be directed towards antiques and collectibles, perked up. They said, well, gee, we need to find a way to capture the amount of money that's going over there. So let's put out information just comparing stocks, bonds, other asset classes, other traditional asset classes, to things like antique furniture or artwork or stamps or coins or currency or baseball cards, whatever it is. Let's also bring in independent analysts to see how we can get into that market, okay? And now here's your first homework assignment. For those of you that have an interest in this topic, and if you don't, you don't, research the Merrill Lynch Athena Fund, ATHENA, and do a Google search on that and tell me what you find in the comments section. The Merrill Lynch Athena Fund was one of the first and only, and almost the last, mutual funds that invested in commodities like art, coins, currency, and other such assets of a collectible or antique nature. The fund went belly up in the 1990s due to bad management and the fact that a lot of the independent analysts kind of padded the numbers that some of this stuff was selling for. The fund was also top-heavy in collectible coins, and I don't know if you know this, guys, but in the 1980s, that was a very bad time to enter the coin grading marketplace. Now, some of you who are collecting video games in 2019 should hear me out on this. This is a very good history lesson for you. In the 1980s, the first coin grading company that hit was PCGS, and it revolutionized the market to the point where if you would have bought coins at those prices that they were selling for, even today in 2019, if you would have sold your holdings on average, you would have not been able to make up for the loss that they took over the long term. That's how much inflated the coin marketplace was in the 1980s. That's why when some of you guys tell me, well, I'm investing in a lot of video games, you're investing too soon, and most likely, okay? Some of these prices will fall, okay? And they will stay flat for many years. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be some that are going to go right up and keep going for at least a limited amount of time. But overall, when you invest at the first time that a catalyst is brought forth in a collecting category, whether it be third-party grading, whether it be a new movie coming out in a proverbial franchise that brings more speculators into the market, that is the worst time to invest in such and such a collectible. Always remember that, okay? Throughout history, history is your best teacher, and history teaches us that, okay? Even if you go back to comic book grading when it first premiered, some of the prices in that were overblown back in the year 2000, from 2001 to 2004. There were a lot of speculative hits and ebbs and flows in the vintage comic book market as well, okay? It takes many years for a collecting category to get established after reputable third-party grading is established into it, okay? You must learn that. You cannot allow passion to overtake logic in that sense. So going back to this, Main Street America saw what was happening on the wealthy side of the equation, where all these sophisticated Wall Street financiers and investors were pouring a lot of money in the fine art, coins, jewelry, antiques. And they wanted a piece of it. So, in the 1980s is when collectibles became hot. And we all know why collectibles became hot. Number one, they could easily be mass-produced. Number two, consumers who can't afford a $1,000 or $2,000 item can easily buy a mass-produced comic book, toy, Pez dispenser, Beanie Baby, Hummel figurine. A lot of that stuff was easy to market as an investment, when in really it was nothing such, okay? However, this allowed the average person who lives on Main Street to get their fix. How many kids watching this video, those of you that collected as a kid, I guarantee you probably collected baseball cards, comic books, toys, Matchbox or Hot Wheels cars, Pez dispensers, even coins, okay? We all have. If you are a collector today, chances are you did it in your childhood as well, okay? A collector's born. They're not made, okay? Another video on that topic. But just remember that. A collector is born. They're not made. That said, this was the beginning as to how the overall public grew to the idea of antiques and collectibles as a valid asset class. But it was not enough. Reason being, outside of the auction houses that existed solely really for the rich, because unless if you had a local auction house, okay, most people back in the 1970s, 1980s, they didn't drive 50 to 100 miles to attend an auction, okay? If they couldn't do it online, they most likely wouldn't do it, or they would do it through mail, meaning they would get a catalog, look through it, mail the bids in, wait for the auction to be over, see what they won, and then pay the auctioneer with a check or money order through the mail. Okay? Very tedious process. That said, the catalyst that changed all this was the internet. When the internet hit the scene, and it wasn't really even the internet, it was actually auction web. It started with eBay. When eBay hit the scene, it was a mass catalyst almost on par of a meteor wiping out the dinosaurs on Earth, okay? Few people understand this, okay? If you were not born before the internet was a mainstay in everyone's home, you have no understanding as to how it impacted our everyday life. Everything from finance, to dating, to entertainment, to social media, to shopping, to e-commerce and collecting changed in a snap of the finger, okay? It hit the antiques and collectibles trade hard. And those that were primed to take advantage of it, watch my video on the massive speculative bubble of Atari and pre-Nintendo video games from 1995 to 2005, fortunes were made. okay? That's all I'm going to say. And I'm not even talking about me. I was a little guy. I was happy to get in and get out with hundreds of thousands of dollars. I know people, okay, they cleaned up. I'm talking, I know people right now that are like just 10 years older than me that have $3 million, $4 million, $5 million, $6 million, $7 million because of what eBay brought them. Because they were smart enough to recognize it for what it was and had connections to source product, okay? And they knew all they cared about was selling, okay? They bought, sold, and did it so many times that they've amassed so much wealth during that time frame, okay? It was massive, okay? And in another video, I'm going to talk more about that because I don't think that people understand that, like, if you go to Heritage Auctions and you spend $3,000 on a graded video game, okay? I'm just going to use this as an example. You're taking $3,000 and you're bidding up a game that somebody is selling on the site, okay? That $3,000 you're spending, okay? You're taking $3,000 and you're giving it to the seller of the item in question, okay? Of course, Heritage takes a cut. The person who's selling, okay, he's getting $3,000 minus the cut that Heritage is getting, obviously, okay? He can take that money, he can invest it in the financial markets, and every month, every 3 months, depending on how he invests it, he can get an interest or dividend payment paid to him. Now, obviously, if you're going to invest in something like the S&P 500, which is a good stable stock investment, if you're investing in a mutual fund or an index fund geared towards that, okay, you can lose money, yes, but if you have a long time horizon, okay, and you invest in that, every 3 months, you're going to get a dividend payment from that money, okay? The person who gets the graded video game, he's not going to get a dividend payment. There's no interest or payments made from items that people hold in a collection. This is something that new collectors don't seem to understand when their eyes are full of passion and their mind goes blank. I often talk to new collectors, and the first thing that I tell them is, okay, give me a list of the items that you want to get for your collection. Let's see what they add up to be, okay? There are people that tell me they just started collecting video games or comic books or coins. You know, on their list, they have 20 items, and the current market value to accumulate those items is close to $150,000. So I'm going to ask this question. If you want to invest in antiques and collectibles, can you afford to allow to have $150,000 of items just sit somewhere where it's not paying you a return every month, every quarter, or every year? Okay? You have to think in that mindset. That's partly how you understand if you should invest or are able to invest in certain markets, okay? Because I hate to say this, some of the people that come to the antiques and collectibles trade, honestly, for the financial betterment of themselves, they would be better off going to the financial markets, okay? You have to have realistic goals and expectations. Like me, I have a 6-figure coin and currency collection. I won't lie, okay? But I've been collecting it for, what, 12 years now? So I should have a 6-figure coin and currency collection. But it doesn't bother me that that money's tied up sitting in a safety deposit box where I'm not getting a quarterly dividend payment from it, okay? I have other assets that pay me a quarterly or monthly dividend on top of that, okay? And that's what you have to understand. If you're going to invest in this stuff also, I want to put this out there. I strongly recommend, and again, this is my opinion. Again, I'm not licensed in anything. This is my opinion. You cannot put all of your assets in one type of commodity or asset class. In other words, you shouldn't have all your assets in stocks, shouldn't have it all in bonds, shouldn't have it all in real estate, shouldn't have it all in mutual funds, shouldn't have it all in ETFs, shouldn't have it all in cryptocurrency, gold, silver, or collectibles, or antiques. Most people that get sucked in sometimes to investing in antiques and collectibles think that all their assets should be poured in to that asset class. That is a recipe for disaster. Because number one, if you want to add to your positions, you're going to have to liquidate something to gain leverage. Okay? Number two, the markets, you're too focused on one market. Even if you put like 10% of your assets in vintage video games, 10% in coins, 10% in currency. It's still focused on a commodity. There's no sustainable growth that's tied to the greater economy, okay? That's what stock market investing allows you to do, okay? When you invest in a mutual fund or an index fund, I'll take the total stock market index fund from Vanguard, just to use it as an example, okay? When you hear GDP, gross domestic product, is set to rise X% every year, okay? Just by investing in that basket of securities that mutual fund is tied to, you're guaranteed growth based on that aspect alone, okay? You have to understand that financial markets and collectible markets usually work in a reverse relationship. There is some overlap, but there's an inverse relationship between the both. That's why one of the things I get upset, and this video is 25 minutes now, we can go a little bit further. One of the things I get upset is when people talk about the financial crisis that occurred in 2008, 2009. They act like all within a matter of weeks, stocks and bonds lost 40% of their value, gold and silver went up 50 to 100%, and antiques and collectibles dropped only a little. Completely false, okay? Antiques and collectibles during the financial crisis, they were a valid asset class, okay? People had to sell and liquidate items to pay for bills or also to survive if they lost their job. Antiques and collectibles dropped substantially during that time. Not as much as financial assets. But I can tell you, as somebody who bought in to certain markets at that time, I made significant amounts of money in the rare coin market because even coins were dropping in value at that time. It would take several years for gold and silver to hit their peaks or highs as a result of the financial market. And I can tell you this as well. When silver hit $35 an ounce, I sold all silver bullion that I had, okay? I paid less than $10 an ounce for it overall. I had something like 1,000 ounces. I literally dumped it on the market. I was thrilled, okay? Now you're gonna say, well, Sean, silver did go up to 41, I think was the high, around 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. I understand that, but I was comfortable cashing out at 35 because I didn't have the hindsight to know that the market would go a little bit higher, okay? There were friends I had who ironically bought more silver when it hit $40 an ounce, which was a dumb move in my opinion, but they were scared. They thought the price would go even higher because some of the stupid, what do I want to say, less than reputable news sites at the time would put out things, oh, silver's going to go to $60 or $100 an ounce, which is completely ridiculous, okay? There's no catalyst right now that's going to cause silver to go to $50 or $100 an ounce, okay? If you believe that, you're very foolish. You're not analyzing those articles, those clickbait articles properly, okay? So let's get back to the subject at hand so I can kind of close up this video since it's going to hit close to 30 minutes. It was the internet that allowed collectibles and antiques to be considered and seen as a valid asset class because it stabilized the market and increased liquidity. Liquidity is something that is often not talked about too much in the trade, and it should be because it's very important. When you own something like a stock or a bond, Wall Street is very liquid. You can sell that security almost any time, as long as there's a buyer on the other end, and you are guaranteed to get your money. Generally, it has to be settled within 72 hours. So within 3 business days, you will have your money for that security, okay, if not sooner. With antiques and collectibles, there's different classes of liquidity. For instance, right now, if you have a giant-size X-Men 1 comic book from 1975 in CGC 9.4, you could sell that relatively easy due to the speculative bubble that has garnered in comic books to be seen as serious investments, okay? However, if you have a wrinkly old copy of, you know, an unkey issue, let's take Avengers 82, and I don't think that's a key issue, I'm going through my mind right now, and it's in fine condition, you can sell it. It's probably going to take you a little longer, though, to find a buyer, especially if it's not graded. That's the way it works. Liquidity is very important in the greater antiques and collectibles trade, and that's what most of the high-end auction sites bring to the table. They offer instant liquidity almost. If you have a coin collection worth 6 figures and you call up Heritage Auctions, I guarantee you, you can get a cash advance on that collection even before it hits the auction block. okay? I can teach you how to negotiate that, and really, it's not really me teaching you anything. It's honestly in the contract. You can negotiate a better rate and pay no interest on that. If you want me to teach you how to do that, that's fine. That said, I'm going to stop there on this video because I'm going to hit 30 minutes. And I just want to give you guys some things to think about in this video. So I hope you enjoyed it. There's going to come a sequel to this video in regards to this because we just scratched the surface of antiques and collectibles as an asset class. Okay, guys? Thank you. Good night. I'm going hoarse, so I'm going to stop talking now.